Hey there, I'm Mike Dunn with Gaming Trend, and we're here at Origins 2023, and I've got next to me Tory Brown, the designer of the amazing new game, Votes for Women. I would tell you more about it, but I'm going to let the designer herself tell you about it because I don't think I would do it justice. So Tory, tell us about Votes for Women.
Thank you very much. Votes for Women is a board game about the ratification of the 19th Amendment, and specifically about the American women's suffrage movement. It runs through 1848 to 1920. It's a card-driven game, so you're playing cards out of your hand to build power across the states. It's a ratification of a constitutional amendment, so it requires two victory conditions. The first is to get the legislation through Congress, and the second is to get, as suffrage, 36 states to ratify. Opposition only needs 13. Now that may sound hard, and it is, but suffrage in the game has a lot more resources, a lot more opportunity to campaign, a lot more to do as you're playing through the game. It's a 1 to 4 player game, which means you can play alone against an Oppobot. The Oppobot also lets you play cooperatively. If you just don't want to play against women's rights, I get it. I understand. You and a friend can play against the Oppobot, and you roll die for their strategic calculations. It takes about an hour and a half, maybe an hour once you get really good and prepared for it, and you know all of the cards. The way that you mix up the decks, the way you roll the dice, it's a little bit different every time. I've been here at Origins watching folks play, and it's just really amazing how different the game plays every time. But folks tell me when they're done that they really enjoyed it, that they learned a lot, and that they felt something. And that's, I think, what I love most about players' reaction to my game, is how it makes people feel.
Yeah, the thing that really stood out to me is, there's a lot of historical simulation games out there. Most of them are centered around wars and aggressive conflict. This is also, I guess, technically a conflict resolution game, but it's like nothing I've seen before. It's just, I can't say enough good things about it. And I haven't even played it yet. I've just watched stuff. I know. Working on it. Now, what inspired you to make this game?
Well, I first thought about a game like this before the centennial, right? In 2020, America celebrated 100 years since women had been granted the right to vote through the Constitution. And I thought, what a remarkable moment, this anniversary, what a great time to be a part of that historic, centennial anniversary. We launched the Kickstarter on that day, so I'd done a lot of work, but the game still had a lot of work that needed to be done. So we launched in August of 2020 on the Kickstarter, kept doing research, kept working on the design, on the mechanics. We had over 100 playtesters and folks who live and breathe war games, and folks who don't play any games at all, folks who know a lot about women's history, folks that don't really have any basis. And all of those folks helped us shape and shift and hone what became this game that was launched in December. So it took about 2.5 years. And when I think about a game about suffrage, I want folks to think about movements, to think about how joining together with their friends and loved ones and neighbors and people they don't know makes us more powerful than our most powerful opponents. I think there's a lot of change that needs to happen in our country. And I really feel like the only way that happens is not just to show up to a voting booth every 2 or 4 years or every off year, depending on what the elections are like in your state, but to do this work year round, to talk to each other, to write petitions, to testify, to get engaged and aware and take these moments when legislation is about to pass or help legislation get passed. Democracy is a year-round sport, and it's not a spectator sport. When we get involved, we can make amazing things happen. It seemed like the suffrage movement was up against all the odds. And together with perseverance and persistence, they got an amendment to the Constitution without the right to vote. These politicians will say if you don't like what's happening, go vote in 6 to 18 months. I say stand up now, get together with a bunch of your friends and neighbors and make it happen now, because we don't have time to wait for 16 to 18 months. And I want Votes for Women to be a part of inspiring people to join a movement and to take part in something in their neighborhood or their state.
Well, and I think that's an important message too, because there's a lot of what's going on today that is echoing what happened then and other situations too. And I think the one thing I'm really curious about is have the younger generation. I have 3 kids. They're all Gen Z. The younger generation is much more politically active than my generation was, or I think just about any generation that I've seen.
Probably since the draft.
Yeah, exactly, right? Exactly. I gotta imagine that the feedback from them has been huge.
It's amazing, right? And I will say, you got to get kids to sit at the table and play. And so that's the first challenge, right? But once they do, the way that the story unfolds, the way you get to take on a character from this movement, the faces that you see, the names that you read, folks that you've never heard of, probably. They did a lot of research to make sure that the folks that were important but not necessarily notorious were included. I hope it gives those people a thought about, I don't have to be famous to do this. I don't need to be, all of my tweets don't have to go viral. I can just do this in my neighborhood, in my community, at my school, and that creates the kind of change that I want to see. Because I think we get a lot of stories in history about the Susan B. Anthonys and Elizabeth Cady Stantons, that those are the people that made it happen. But there are people that will never know their names. Right. And without their work, without their dedication, without their sacrifice, none of it would have been possible. And that's what's happening today. We're not all going to be famous on, the tweets and the Snapchats or however the kids do these things these days, the Twitters. But it's, about all of us working together, big and small, that makes a big difference.
So this game has been out since December, and it's out in retail.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So did you do the Kickstarter in 2020? So that was a successful Kickstarter.
Yeah, I got nearly twice the goal and lots of backers. And I got to say, there's a lot of, not consternation, but reasonable frustration about Kickstarter, right? And when my Kickstarter launched, I was looking at all these other successful Kickstarters where there's like slick videos and finished rule books, and it's just, you're not actually funding this project, you're marketing this project. But Kickstarter for me was both. Both funding helped us pay for the play test, helped us sort of do a bit of a proof of concept. And then the folks that got those games early have been evangelicals of the board game, of the story of suffrage, and for me. And so having those early supporters out there tweeting, talking to a friend, posting on Board Game Geek, those early reviews, it all snowballs. And so I really feel like the Kickstarter process is messy and weird, but was really important. And I would say to people that are doing designs to, probably still continue kickstarting, if not just crowdfunding in general, because of those sort of supply lines, those marketing lines where they're sort of regularly combing through the Kickstarter launches where you can advertise that's just where people are, the emails that go out to folks on Kickstarter. It's just really helpful to get your game in front of people. And that's the name of the game, is just constantly telling anyone who might listen, not even will listen, might listen about the game.
Kind of like garnering support.
Is there something like political organizing?
Yes, exactly.
Oh my God,
exactly.
I hadn't even thought about it.
So yes, if you're an indie game developer, the answer is grassroots.
Absolutely.
Grassroots.
And the word of mouth.
Yeah,
right?
Word of mouth, yep.
I mean, big splashy advertising campaigns are great for big splashy corporations. But for people like me and designers like me, it's about people telling friends. It's about folks posting it on Twitter and sharing it. It's about folks putting those board game reviews in if you like it. If you don't like the game, then you probably shouldn't Board Game Geek review it. Right. But it is about, like that word of mouth, that's really been the lifeblood and helped my game get as far as it's gotten.
Excellent. So I know you're still caught up in the buzz around Votes for Women right now. Have you started thinking about your next game?
It's the question. The next question.
Yes.
Of course I have. There's something about playing a lot of board games and then designing one that I think changes the chemistry in one's brain. My brain works differently now that I've gone through the first process and talked about a lot of games with a lot of folks. I think for me, this idea of sharing movement history to help shape future activism is where it's at. There are a lot of amazing, beautiful puzzle games out in the world. I don't see myself ever being an amazing, beautiful puzzle game designer. I think games like Votes for Women, the opportunity to research deeply, the chance to take that that history and turn it into mechanics. All of that, I think, is just, I'm bitten by the bug. And so I've definitely been thinking about new areas of American history that would make a sort of another fascinating movement game.
And we're seeing a lot more of that in the industry. It's starting to bubble up. Like Her Story and the Stonewall Uprising game. Like, there's so much good stuff out there, and you can count on Gaming Trend to be a voice for you for games like that and for you. So definitely let us know when you're ready to talk about your next one.
You got it.
And hopefully we'll be able to have a review up of Votes for Women in the coming weeks or months. Definitely keep your eyes peeled on Gaming Trend for any further coverage of Votes for Women and anything else Tory might happen to make. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Yeah.